Hello, I'm Donna Cryer. I am the founder and CEO of the Global Liver Institute and a liver transplant recipient from a rare disease. So I am very honored and privileged to be hosting the series of roundtables throughout our pediatric and rare liver diseases month as we focus on parents and pregnant people. As we have done some fantastic conversations on various topics throughout the month on GLI Live, which I hope you will tune into and catch. They'll be available on YouTube and everywhere else you find GLI. We're also doing a series of roundtables, and this one is for the parents and partners. We want to make sure that we are listening to the issues, the priorities, the places of importance, so that as GLI and the Pediatric and Rare Liver Diseases Council puts together its agenda, we are focusing on things that matter to the people who matter. And so with me today, I have some fabulous knowledge droppers and experience havers. I have Jordan Sarbaugh, who is a co-founder of BEAR, and this the biliary atresia research and education group. And and hopefully you have grown to love them over the course of this month and this series, as I have. If not, go back to the beginning and watch some more. But Jordan will fill us in. And we have Kara Ayik and Alex Summers. Kara's book, Extraordinary. It has an exclamation point. That's why I'm so excited. And I feel that exclamation point in the title of her book, for children with rare diseases. And when I had the opportunity to encounter it and to read it, I wanted to share it and support it. So I'm so happy to have that opportunity today. And Alex Summers is a partner and caregiver, and a new grad student as well. And so he'll tell us about that. But he and his partner have experienced preeclampsia, and will share that with us, and how they're each turning this into advocacy. So welcome to you all. Thank you. So I try to give organizations that everybody's mother would write a check for. So because those are the ones that I love. I'm like, that doesn't even sound like me. That sounds like my mother would have asked somebody to say that about me. So so hopefully I've succeeded in embarrassing you thoroughly, because that's what I'm supposed to do. Jordan, why don't you start and tell us about your organization and what really prompted you to make this your cause, your mission?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So as you said, my name is Jordan Sarbaugh, and I co-founded BEAR, Biliary Atresia Research and Education. And it goes back to when my son was born in 2016. He was born and he was diagnosed with biliary atresia. We're one of the lucky ones where we were actually diagnosed pretty early on. And when I say pretty early on, I mean like literally within the first week or two, which is pretty uncommon. With biliary atresia, time is of the essence, actually, where you typically need to have your first surgery to try to get the bile flowing from the liver into the intestines by like the 8th week. So when I say it's pretty early, I always consider myself kind of one of the lucky ones. So then my son Hudson, he actually, that first surgery that I mentioned, it failed. So it didn't work for him to restore the flow from his liver to his intestines. And then at 9 months old, he actually had a liver transplant, and his uncle, so my brother-in-law, was his living donor. And it's, we obviously have a great relationship with Trevor, and it was really special to go ahead and have that. And again, we feel very lucky that we were able to have that option. And then after transplant, I mean, it was kind of, and we can talk about this more in terms of our experience, but, it was really like night and day in terms of Hudson all of a sudden had this, energy and life that he had. So really focus on getting Hudson strong from 9 months on to when he was ready for preschool. And then once he was a little bit more stable, another parent of biliary atresia patient, Jen Lau, and we were like, you know what, we've been involved in the transplant community, in the liver disease community. What can we do to further push research for biliary atresia? And so we came together and we founded BEAR, Biliary Atresia Research and Education. And we really saw that there was a need because, first of all, there wasn't any nonprofit here in the US that was dedicated specifically to biliary atresia. And it's the number one reason why pediatric children receive liver transplants. So we're like, there's obviously this need, but then there's also this need for the community to come together because it is a rare disease. So people often feel like they're alone. So this is a great way to bring caregivers, parents, children together who are experiencing biliary atresia. So thanks for having me. I'll go into, more and we'll talk about experience, but that's my background and how I'm involved in this community and why I'm so lucky to be here today.
You've already blown some people's minds. Some people listening didn't know that children could be born with a liver disease. They didn't know children got liver diseases. They might not have known that children get transplants. They might not have known that you can do living donation liver transplants, and that the liver, because it regenerates, will grow back in the donor and in the child. So you've already blown some minds right there. Alex, tell us about what you and Cristina went through, and what particular problems and pain points caused you to want to stick this out and carry this forward to help others.
Yeah, so my wife was diagnosed very early on in her pregnancy with hyperemesis, so it was very difficult from the very beginning with her being able to get the nutrients and what she needed for herself and our baby to remain healthy. So that was a struggle throughout the pregnancy. But it wasn't until we arrived early. Our due date was December 4th, and we ended up coming into the hospital around October 27th. And it was there that we found out that she was preeclamptic. She had preeclampsia, and they started the inducing process. And very shortly after that, she went into HELP syndrome. So it was looking back, we both agreed that it was a very traumatizing event. And through those struggles and what we've learned and in that time and the effects of how that's affected us, from the short term after the birth of our son through an emergency C-section, and then our family planning for future, how that's affected us, and the idea of do we want to have more kids or not? That's all that has kind of encouraged us to be more aware and look into things like this. And then, as a public health professional myself, I have, a master's of public health degree. So coming on and doing something like this, I feel like I'm doing my due diligence, not only as a caregiver, but also as a, public health professional, to lend some perspective so that, fathers like myself can, have this perspective and, be better prepared to be protectors and providers and caregivers for their families.
Alex, you're exactly why we're really intentional about creating this month for parents and partners and pregnant people and not just the women or the infants, but we really know that I'm a daddy's girl, maybe that's part of it too, but how important men are and partners are to healthy pregnancies and to families. And so I'm so glad that you're here with us, and I just wanted to take a moment to tell you how important you are, and to thank you for being here and being with your wife and doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Kara, so tell us about your experience and the journey to being an author.
Well, I had actually a pretty normal motherhood up until age 2, when my son, during a routine pediatric exam, child check at 2, the doctor felt an enlarged spleen. So from there, he sent us for a full battery of tests. And that was really the beginning of the caregiving journey for me at age 2. So across an entire year, we kept going back for liver function tests. Each time I assumed they would come back normal, and they never did. And finally, by the end, I just started avoiding the call that would tell me my son's liver enzymes were still not normal. And under a lot of pressure, I agreed to a liver biopsy when he was exactly age 3, 1 year later. And the findings of the liver biopsy indicated that he had something called what was called Niemann-Pick disease. Now we call it ASMD, or acid single myelinase deficiency. And that was confirmed by further genetic testing. So 3 is when I began my work as an ASMD mother. And it was it's been an incredibly hard, and it's been an incredibly long and informative and enriching journey. And I have a lot of hindsight. So when Evren was 18, my gratitude for his life, I was just overflowing that he had such a good life. And he's still with us. He does have a lot of health struggles because of the ASMD, but to celebrate his graduation and to allow him his voice, we collectively wrote our book. And it's the book that we want other children to benefit from. It is the book that Evren says he wished he had when he were younger. And I very intentionally had my illustrator put 2 children in there with hepatosplenomegaly. And so that is a little bit of the story of how the book came to life.
I think that's important, having never met another patient who looked like me with my disease until I created this organization. Having a book, some type of representation to let people know that you're not the only one, you're not going through this alone, is so important. Because I think for kids, that's all you really want to do. You just want to be like everybody else. And so that's so important. Alex, I'd love to learn how your experiences with healthcare informed your graduate studies, and if you chose different topics of study, different areas to research. I know my own encounter with my transplant changed the direct trajectory of my career significantly. So I'm always interested in what influence it may have had on someone else's.
Yeah, so, to be honest with you, and I think that's why organizations like yourself are so important to bring attention to, health issues like this, because, I wasn't really very much aware of, liver diseases like this and, their effects on individuals. And I can't say that we glossed over it heavily in my studies. Most of what I worked on was grant writing and a little bit of project management, and just sort of, focusing on community health and, kind of leading the charge to get communities together to, help those in need or address health issues with certain groups within those communities, and et cetera. So, definitely.
You're hired. Oh, did you know this? Did you not know this was a job interview? You're hired. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We need exactly that.
Well, hey, send me a job offer. I'll look into it.
Okay.
But yeah, so and then throughout the pregnancy, this is our first kid, and I'm a first time father, so seeing all this, from a caregiver, from a husband's perspective, and then later a father's perspective, it's all very new to me, so still processing. Even we both even look at each other some nights, and we talk about what happened that night and that morning through the pregnancy, and trying to remember what happened, the process, and how terrifying it was for both of us, or how we didn't really realize in that moment because of how traumatizing it was. And so I've definitely have a greater perspective on trying to help, broaden and enlighten individuals like myself to, make sure that they have, like, they're prepared, but really, there's only so much that you can prepare, especially for, a first time around, for a first father. And even, if you have multiple kids already, having your wife go through something like that just out of the blue, those things can be jarring for an individual. So doing my part to kind of help bring awareness to that. And, for me, a lot of it was just kind of stepping up to the plate and taking up, just things that would normally be like split jobs for, like, around the house, or like taking my wife to appointments, and just being physically present, taking the time to take off work or take extended lunches to go with my wife to appointments, or just be there physically for her, and then finding time to not only just care for her, but also try to mentally take her away from the stresses and what the anxiety that she has, making sure that she's not alone, she's not bearing this burden all by herself. We're very much in this together, even though I don't play as a physical role as you do in it. Like, I'm still here, to help you in any way that I can. So a lot of it is a lot of what my message would be is just be present and be adaptable and be willing to make sacrifices for yourself. Like, burnout is definitely a real thing for caregivers, but at the same time you kind of have to pick and choose a little bit. And I think when it comes to individuals like my wife and like what she was going through, like, it was a no-brainer and no effort really to me to make those kind of sacrifices and be there for my wife and to the extent that I could. So
I've been both a caregiver and a patient, and I find being a caregiver is much harder. They don't let you lie down. They don't give you the good meds. You have to be nice to everybody as a patient. If you like, oh, she's just and so it's much harder. And so I think that when what I'm listening for in these conversations, and what I hope the people who are listening are translating out of this, there are people who are working on seemingly neutral or aseptic topics like clinical workflow, but what that really means is someone has had to take off work. They have to drive. They have to then sign in. They have to, be there with the person. The person may or may not have mobility issues or others. How does that all work for people? And so when I hear people say things like, well, a liver biopsy is only, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I'm like, no, it's a whole day, maybe 2 days for 2 people. Because a liver biopsy means that not only the person getting the biopsy, but the person bringing the person to get the biopsy, whether it's a woman or the child, or and they have to take off work, and they have to rearrange and drive and wait for the not to, I've had 6, so not to sit on the side, lay on the side, so then you don't bleed out, and then take home, and then you're fixing like soup because your appetite's and so the whole day, it's the whole day for 2 people. And so when we think about that from a clinical standpoint or an economic standpoint, we're having 2 different conversations, and we're coming up with 2 very different numbers if you're asking those on the health system side often, and those on the patient and family side, how much value or how much time or energy or dollars were put into a particular, clinical episode. And so our advocacy comes from hearing these situations and making sure that others are really not only hearing them, but taking them into account to change how things have been done so far, so that real people can have meaningful access and survive to tell the tale. So this is what it looks like. Jordan, you the R in BEAR is research. So tell us about the research gaps that exist and things that you would like to see done.
Yeah. So I mean, the gap is that there's really no cohesive research or people coming together. So right now in the U.S., I guess let me rewind really quickly. And when we first established BEAR, and I first became a parent and an advocate for biliary atresia, I mean, the first thing I want to do is I want to read up on it, right? So you do the Google thing that everyone tells you not to do, but and
They're
you want
good
to
and
get as
bad
much
sources,
information as possible. Yeah. But you want to get as much information as you can. I'm a person that I believe knowledge is power. And first of all, I found that there was that gap, right? There isn't that much information out there. And then when I go further into it, I realize that there's a lot of organizations and centers that are working in a silo.
Right.
And they're working, they have their own initiatives,
Right.
and they have their own funding,
Right.
and they have their own essentially like motives right behind it. So
Jordan, let me interrupt. Let me ask a question because I'm really fascinated. What types of questions were you answering? If if we were looking at your search box, because we're assuming you weren't committing a murder, we're trying to expose somebody and things. So what was in your search box? What questions were you trying to have answered about biliary atresia? Was it about what causes biliary atresia? How does biliary atresia progress? Like, what are the questions that researchers really haven't answered, that when you did find papers on Medline or in journals or on the Aspigan website or the NASA, what was missing? What questions were going unanswered?
I think the biggest question, the $1 million question, is what causes it, right? And there's no one knows. There's theories out there, but there's no definitive scientific proof or research that's really driven or made significant progress. And I think that that's the $1 million question, where we feel like everyone can come together. And so instead of having all of these different centers and organizations or foundations funding 10 different projects trying to reach the same thing, why don't we all come together and combine resources and look at it together? Why don't we combine the data, and so that we all have a bigger subset to look at? Why aren't we working together on this? And that's something that we as in Bear are really trying to bring these people together and say, hey, let's take a group approach at this. We're more powerful in bigger numbers. And I see that that's the number one thing.
Okay, so I'm like to, this roundtable a little different from GLI Live. I'm going to challenge us all to sort of brainstorm in real time and see how we can set the stage for sort of solutions, and everybody can jump in here. So there are successful examples of consortia. Kathy Giusti from the MMRF Foundation is a prime example of someone who used her experience in industry to create a consortia to do just what you said, to come together and to come together in a way where they were sharing data to advance treatments. I also think that there is an element that you're trying to bring to the table of the patient-centered question. So there may be a lot of fascinating investigator-initiated research that's being done in this area. I'm just postulating, but it may not be getting to the key question that patients and their families are prioritizing. So there may need to be a little restructuring of the research agenda. So what I might suggest, and I'm doing this live as well because I haven't researched this. So Royce, the leader of our Pediatric Rare Liver Disease Council, is probably going to slap me on the wrist and say we're either working on that project or I would have briefed you differently if I knew you were just going to jump in. But this is what I do for fun. So I would think that it would be a great project for the Pediatric and Rare Liver Diseases Council at GLI to come together on sort of singular questions of this, since we have so many groups and organizations, including pediatric medical societies and many research centers, to challenge this challenge them to this. We also have it may be something that we take to NIH, that we ask NIDDK to perhaps do in partnership with the National Institutes of Children and Maternal Health on a project. But I think that there is power in having a singular, collective, unified ask that we all push for, rather than sort of a constellation of issues. And so clearly this would take time if you're ever looking for the cause of something, particularly the genetic causes. And there are institutes, there are clinical research networks at NIH on childbirth. And I wonder if it's a matter of access to some of their data or some of their samples to go back and maybe answer this question in biliary atresia. But it's something we would certainly be willing to help you with. You don't have to start this from scratch, but I really love the idea of finding the answer and making this, I think, a clinical and an advocacy and a policy ask together.
Absolutely. I love the enthusiasm. And even to bring it back to the patient and caregiver perspective is, I think that a lot of, as we've been talking to parents, we see that, a center, for example, could go ahead and be part of a research initiative. And, a parent will go ahead and fill out a waiver, and a release and everything. But then they don't hear anything about it. Or they're like, oh, but if I signed and I did a waiver to go ahead and release my child's information, like, doesn't that mean that that's accessible to everyone? So I think that there's also a gap in educating the caregivers in what stuff entails and what is done with the information and because also, I mean, I think back to mine and I did the same thing, right? I signed Hudson up to be part of the Children's Network. I didn't know at the time what that was. And even now, before I founded Bear, I was like, wait, but isn't that information? I was told that information was going to help better, and that data was going to be available for doctors to look at and surgeons to look at and everything. And then I found out that I need to go and I have to follow up myself with my center about the quote unquote results of that or what that data has been doing. That's not something that I think an average parent or caregiver knows to ask or knows to follow up on. So I think that there's that opportunity to educate the caregiver of what's out there and what can be possible with that, and what's being done with. And again, I don't expect a caregiver because everything's happening all at once, right? So here's another waiver for you to sign. Here's everything like that. But I think that there's an opportunity for that follow-up and the opportunity to continue that relationship. So this is just a really long way to say, that's another gap that we found and that we see an opportunity. Is
I
that's
smile
something
because
that we haven't focused on.
Yeah, no, I smile because I was the GAO appointee to the HIT policy committee. And so these aha moments about what happens with your data are one welcome to the table. And so I think that one of the things that we can do is that there are there are places for you. There are committees that we can put you on that will actually leverage and help make changes. And there have been changes in data sharing and data partnership, but there needs to be more. And so you're absolutely right. I think we'll probably include in this show notes, there is a sort of a patient's guide to data governance that a group called Invite created by a patient advocate who has great expertise in health data. So a shout out to Anna McAllister, who worked on that. And so I think that gets to some of the issues. But you're right. Patients think that their data has certain uses and we want it to be broader. And so one of the projects that we have considered is, rather than starting yet another registry, yet another silo of information, but to have a position that is more focused on finding the liver data in the various repositories and places where it are, and sort of freeing the data, if you will, so that it flows more towards these patient-centered purposes and uses without the individual having to do the work. So you're absolutely on the right track, and I'm so excited to have someone who's interested in this area to add to the team. Kara, you address another issue and age group in this. And so share with us sort of what the next stage of your work looks like, and if you had sort of one priority for us and our council, what would that be?
Well, first of all, I just want to touch really quickly upon what it means to be a caregiver of a person with a liver condition. And part of this responsibility is it's multidimensional, but I'm the provider of the health insurance. I am the provider of the copays. I am the secretary who keeps track of all the appointments and all the diagnostic tests. I am the emotional supporter. I'm the teacher who tries to guide him into making the right decisions. I had to become the lay expert in liver health. And I'm the third leg of a very complicated table that is my son with the liver condition,
Mm-hmm.
his healthcare team, and myself trying to be the intermediary between the three of them. If I had one wish,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a myth that there's a quarterback out there, that there is someone managing all of the care, that there's someone making sure that his endocrinologist doesn't
Mm-hmm.
prescribe medicine that isn't liver friendly, and that his heart doctor isn't prescribing medicine that's, collectively going to, cause problems for his liver. There's no one like that. And
Right.
I wish that I had a quarterback. I wish that there were someone who were better helping me to manage the health
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it. And I am trying to move Evren towards
Yeah.
doing more of that for himself, but it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight.
It absolutely is a process, and I smile only because I know it to be true, and I smile only so I don't cry. It's something that I in my own experience, I try to keep my mother, was able to sort of keep her so she didn't realize this whole sort of workload and burden that's on that was on me. But as the parent of a younger child, you didn't have that choice. Even now, my husband's a physician, I'm an attorney, and it still takes a lot. So that's always in my thoughts. If it's this hard for us, what are other people doing? And other people are dying or crumbling under the burden. And so, the fact that, legislation in Congress didn't, include supports for caregivers, is more than disappointing. It is deadly. And so it enlarges the way we see our legislative agenda. And on the micro level, we also think about how can we support the creation of more positions for liver nurse navigators and social workers who are informed on our issues and problems. Because I remember life in the transplant bubble with my transplant coordinator, and then life outside here out in the wild is not so easy. And the attention that I have to pay to my labs and things. Is really too much to expect. And if I was not feeling well, it would be impossible. And that's when you really need somebody to come into action. And so it's really an untenable position. And so one of our strategic imperatives for this year is expanding the work that we're doing for caregivers that we started last year, and also our partnerships with the gastroenterology and hepatology advanced practice providers, those nurse practitioners and nurse navigators who have saved more lives than I think they realize, because they've saved a lot of sanity and saved a lot of marriages and parents as well. And so those are two areas that we will share more of, and I'll share this video frankly with them so they can better understand our issues. We also are sharing more information and stories like this with employers and health plan executives so that they can better construct benefit plans that allow for the things that actually improve our health and the health of our families, and not just the most expensive procedure or something, but it could be something that's frankly far less expensive but far more valuable to us. So I think as patients and caregivers have more of a way to speak to health plans and health insurance companies the same we do with pharmaceutical companies, we will be better served. So let me do one last round as we close this out to make sure that I've captured, the most pressing issue that you wanted to express during our time together, because this really is your time and your platform. You've just made me have so many ideas and plans that I believe I've overspoken my time. So maybe starting with Alex, Jordan, and ending with Kara. What is one last takeaway for our listeners?
For me, listening, to you all and, your concerns and, your organizations and your missions and like the obstacles you've went through and what you're trying to do to push through to, advocate for, individuals and such, it seems for me, personally, there is a lack in health communication and a lack in networking, in especially, not taking a seat from the caregiver aspect, also from a public health professional, not that's kind of our thing, as public health professionals is to, communicate and, try to diagnose and like, prevention strategies. And if not that, then, answers and, steps to take forward. And I feel like, for me, I'm not sure what, you know, individuals like myself are taking to approach issues like this, but there definitely is a need for it, I think, especially in the aspect of planning and implementing strategies and things to help individuals and working with government entities, with local businesses and entities and nonprofits and organizations like yourselves and things like that to help alleviate these kind of health issues. And then, also again, from a husband and a father now, um, making sure to, ask these kind of questions, look for, organizations like yourselves, for support and for information as well, because, to be honest, I don't remember, anyone, after my son was born, coming up to us and being like, hey, this is an organization you can get in touch with,
Mm.
to better inform yourselves or, become active in. And I think my wife just looked on her own because she's a physician assistant herself, a care, a provider, to individuals. So I think she looked, for herself, some sort of support and found it, luckily. And, I think there needs to be more of that. And I think on a personal level, if there's no one coming to you, take the initiative, try to look for help, and don't just take it all on yourselves. And then of course, when you have these experiences, share them, advocate, do your part, with what time you have, even if it's just, something like this, every little bit, helps to some degree. So I'll leave it with
Absolutely.
that.
We will tap into your professional skills. Most of the GLI staff have MPHs. I'm the rare JD because we agree that the skills learned in health communications, in policy planning, are exactly what will move these issues forward in a way. Jordan, how can people learn more about the work that BEAR does?
Well, I think that first of all, I really want to tee on Alex what you said in terms of sharing your story. I think that from a caregiver perspective, I think that's like the number one thing is let's normalize these conversations. And I think that we can do that by, participating in GLI discussions like this. I think something even as simple as social media, I think there's definitely some pros in there because I think when people see that there's other people out there experiencing that, we're starting to normalize it and people feel seen. In terms of how people can get in touch with our organization and further our organization is we're doing exactly just that. Is our main mission is awareness, making sure that everyone knows that biliary atresia exists, and then making sure that they understand the initiatives that we're doing and that we're really trying to take on and bring the community together. We're taking two approaches. We're really looking at bringing the community together, bringing the caregivers together. And Kara, I would actually love to talk with you because I would love your perspective in terms of being a caregiver when when the patient is a child and then graduating to adulthood and how that dynamic has changed. I would love to pick your brain with that kind of down the road, or I'm going to stalk you after this. But we're really trying to make sure that we bring the community together. But the things that I was speaking with you about, Donna, is we're also trying to take that medical approach and start working on the research and the education from the medical perspective, not just in terms of educating the public, but we've also found that with biliary atresia, there's also a lot of, like PCPs, so primary care physicians and family doctors that aren't aware of these rare diseases.
Right.
And they're not well versed. Maybe they saw it in a textbook in med school, once or twice, but it hasn't been part of their practice. Right. So it's also, how can we go ahead and bring those materials together and educate the medical community too. Right. So those are some of the things that we're doing. And I think that that's just an example of, a caregiver and mothers on a mission, if you will, parents on a mission, if you will, of really turning that caregiver into a passion and turning it into a productive conversation, into a productive mission. So I know that was kind of more than you asked for. But.
No, that's great. And I think that nobody can stop a mother on a mission, so I don't even try. And I think that in addition to, joining us on the Pediatric and Liver Diseases Council, I invite you all to participate in our Advanced Advocacy Academy, because I think this is where, advocates come together, learn these skills to try to sort of knit these pieces together, and we're able to help support both their individual and collective advocacy plans. And so I would invite you all to attend. So Kara, I'll let you have the last word. Where can we find your book? And will you do a book signing at A3 is what I think my question.
Just want to really quick say what has been the biggest stressor, emotional toll aside, the biggest stressor across this journey has been health insurance. Working with an HMO, being a person of lower middle income, it has been extraordinarily hard, and I look forward to improvements in advocacy in that arena. And yes, our book has now been translated into a number of languages. We're about to release Tagalog, which is very exciting. Hopefully Turkish in just a little while longer, but it is available from all major book sellers. So thank you so much.
That's fantastic. We actually have several Tagalog speakers on staff, and I actually have somebody in particular that I will send that copy to in the administration. So we'll talk. So thank you today for all of you on this roundtable to highlight issues, so many areas where we can move forward together, and also being vulnerable enough to share, what is very hard about being a caregiver, being a parent, being a partner, being part of this process. And so I thank you for that, and I hope you take a little bit of our heart and strength with you every day. When the moment gets tough, know that we're only a phone call away, only email or a text or an Instagram message away, and we're there for you. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody listening.
Thank you.
Thank you all.